thank you for joining us today. And today's guest is Chauncey Williams, MCEC Coordinator of School Success for Muskegon Public Schools. The pathway that we're focusing on today is education and training. Please note that guests of our Zoom webinar will have view-only capabilities and do not have access to video or audio. Please use the chat feature to ask any questions. The host will monitor and ensure questions are gathered, and this session will be recorded. So if you miss it or you want to share it out with your class or another opportunity, you'll be able to do so. So it's noon. We're going to get started. Chauncey, thank you so much for joining us today and being a part of our Future Focus series. We're so excited to have you. Your passion is infectious and contagious for what you do in education. So Chauncey, give us insight to your role at Muskegon Public School and what you do.
My role in Muskegon Public Schools is to function as administrative support staff to the counselor and principal, teachers and students. So it's not a disciplinary role. It's a role where I bring in career exploration or experiences through SEL, social emotional learning, for our students at MCEC, Muskegon Community Educational Center. And our phrase is, it's the space where your child's education is magnified with a collaborating community. So in that role, the past 3 years, my job was able to focus on, and I have it in my office today, on 5 areas: true success for social emotional learning, that platform, career readiness, workplace visits, community partners, and positive behaviors. And what I've noticed here in the last 3 years, as we track that progress, attendance, behavior, and a sense of belonging is imperative in getting students to be proud about their education, but also to aspire and push through barriers. So I feel that the social emotional learning and showing them future outcomes is a great connection. So that's my role in the capacity that I work with our curriculum director and other spaces instructional specialists to onboard career opportunities, but also experiences throughout our city or in a virtual platform for our students.
Chauncey, I think that's so awesome that you kind of share that and the role that it expands. We in education know that having good teachers and good people in the educational space is very vital. And so we want to attract those people to those positions. But I think everybody's pretty familiar with classroom teachers and the role that they have. They see them every day. But roles like yours, or even in the administrative space, students might not know quite as much. And you talk about connecting students to opportunities and social emotional learning, those relationships, and allowing them to see their future while they're in their K through 12 space is so vital. Even in the work that I do, I know you and I work in similar roles and supporting each other. In that role of helping students see the work that they're doing in the classroom is valuable to their future success. And so I'm so excited that we get to share what you do. So let me ask you a little bit, when you were, middle school, high school, and you were thinking about your future, did you ever see yourself in this space in education? How did that look for you at that point?
I come from, on my mother's side, I come from a family of educators. All her sisters mainly went to Jackson State University. So there was, every summer we used to go visit Mississippi. And one year I got a chance to live with my aunt Ollie. Rest in peace, she passed last year due to COVID. So I know that's an experience everybody has to deal with. And at the time, she was always telling me that I was going to go to college. I'm going to do this. I'm going to Jackson State. Even though I didn't go to Jackson State, I ended up going go green, go white. I went to Michigan State. I kind of let my family down, but she always pressed education on me. And the turning point for me was when I was in the 8th grade, I had a math teacher. And a lot of times you remember your teachers for 2 things: good things and bad things. And this is my first time having an African-American male teacher in Jackson, Mississippi. And it was at Brinkley Middle School. I remember I was in the 8th grade and the class was algebra. And this teacher, first impression, I was fond of him because it's the first African-American male I have. I'm in this state outside of Michigan. So I'm in a new environment, and I was struggling in math, and it was frustrating. And it got to the point when my aunt, she was always involved in everybody's education. So at the time, my mother was ill and my mother was with us, but she couldn't go to parent-teacher conference. So my aunt, she did that supporting role, being my mother's baby sister. So she goes to conference and gets to Mr. Springer's room. Now she works at Jackson State. She worked at Jackson State as a professor. So she's talking to this teacher about my performance in his class. And he articulated that I was a struggling student and I possibly couldn't learn. And that devastated me at the time. And in any other situation, an adult probably would have seen that as a confrontation. But my aunt, being educated and a woman of God, what she was, she said, okay, that's good enough. So she goes home and she had this area that you could sit in. It was like a bar area and beautiful home. And she had these things, and the kids probably don't know what this is. Encyclopedia Britannicas. It was like the books before the internet. I know, Michelle, you know about those, right?
I do though.
Yeah.
Yes, I do.
So it was all these Encyclopedia Britannicas, right? And she grabbed, I think it was A, and it was like, she looked at the continent of Africa, right? And she showed me the people in Egypt, and she said, once upon a time, this was known as the dumbest space in Africa because they were translating everything through symbols and words and alphabets and numbers. I see, that's the math you have right now. And then she showed me the pictures of the people, and they resembled what I look like. And she said, well, if he think that you're in that space, you might be just like these people. So that stuck with me. And in the end of the year, I ended up passing the class with a B and doing well. But then it transitioned to me wanting to help my friends, because I had both of my parents. You know, at the time, my mother and father was not together. When I was in the 8th grade, they stepped away for about a year. But I always had both of my parents, and my friends didn't. And my mother always stressed education, even though she was a homemaker. My dad was a World War II veteran, so I'm kind of like a student or a child that's been raised by older parents. Mm-hmm. So my mother always pressed on, you're going to college, you're going to do this, I'm going to put you around these people. And my father always felt about working. And it got to the point when I was in high school, I got an opportunity to work with a group, Gloria Gardner White. It was the Urban League. And we got an opportunity to work into the social services space where we had a summer, right? This is a whole summer. And it was part of like National Honor Society. So we selected this group of students, it's about 15 of us. And we were selected on grades, performance. And I had this opportunity to spend 2 weeks in different spaces. One of them was in the court system, working with juvenile detention in high school, DHS, summer program with kids, 4-H, Michigan State University, and some other spaces. And in those 2 weeks, I found myself really looking at the social sciences like this might be it. This might be it. So I go through that program and I say, social sciences, oh, good. So I get to Michigan State and say, I'm going to be in the college of, I can't remember the name of the college for social science, but I started out as a major in social science. And then it was like the psychology class when they gave that that real thick book in the class from 6 to 9, my freshman year, I was like, this is not going to be it. So I ended up my second year doing 4-H again. So the kids, because I was a former 4-H student and I did it in high school, I ended up doing 4-H at Michigan State, and kids were coming up and they were taking a liking to me as I was doing things on campus. And I ended up transitioning, and I was still under the 60 credits before you declare a major. So I ended up getting a high recommendation to go into the College of Ed at Michigan State. So I had the grades. I think I had to have like a 3.3 or 3.4. It was so hard to get in back then. And I did and I was on purpose. I did elementary education on purpose because I didn't have an African-American male teacher until I was in the 8th grade. So I said, if a kid can see somebody that looked like them, but functions in a space where they're professional, but they can be themselves and they can articulate and they can educate, but they also can be what kids call cool, fun. At the time I started teaching at 22. I'm 44 now. So that's a long time. So I started in the city of Detroit, And that was some great mentorship. My first principal was Dr. Rivers, Miss Nixon, Miss Lewis, and we were a Math and Science Academy, and it was a public school. And that helped me thrive. They let me know that we're hiring you because we like the way you be yourself. And when that helped me get along with the competencies, the instruction, how to teach better. And at the time we had NWEA and we had MEP tests. So it was always my job for the math at the elementary level. But I worked in elementary for 20 years as a teacher. And then this opportunity presented itself 3 years ago. So I saw myself always being in that space, and my community, even when I transitioned to Muskegon, always needed me. So I always worked from a point of view where I was needed, and I had an asset-based type of mindset. And when I'm saying asset, I always saw from abundance. Whoever got in front of me, it wasn't they're looking at their CA-60 or their past and saying, oh, this student failed everything, or they come from a single parent home, or all these issues. I don't know how I'm going to teach them. What I found out was, being the only African-American male in some spaces, that most of the kids that were having trouble, they just thought it was like the typical thing to put them with a Black male. But being from, I'm gonna give my university kudos. Michigan State has the #1 elementary ed program. So it gave me an insight on how to work with students, and they always had PDs and professional developments to develop my skill set. And I was always had an opportunity to go back with 4-H in the summertime. So I always seen it as, and my father used to say this, he said, the education you receive is not for you. And I was like, I never understood that until I got to an age where I matured enough, where my insight and my past experiences were important to somebody else. Just having a small conversation and redirecting somebody's behavior or their career or their feelings. And I say this to our students in this program, I say, with all the education we have, that I have, that our principal have, I know these 2 words make great connections. Me too. It's a simple phrase. If you're having a conversation with somebody about transitioning their career, their grades, their family, and the experience of saying me too, having a strong relationship, that helps you grow. So me being in this space as an educator, I know my aunt is proud, my mom is proud. They're not here with us today, but it's foundational things. And I would say this, I got this book, I read a lot, and it's called the Psycho Cybernetics. And it talks about how to improve your self-image. So I wanted to read some out of it just for the audience that's listening today, because I thought about it and I said, that's exactly it. It says, when asked about previous successes, some people draw a blank. They literally cannot think of any. I used to be of the opinion these people were lying, practicing cunning art of self-deception, and fooling no one. Some people's success were not perceived as their own. For instance, when asked if becoming a doctor was a success, one medical doctor said that his parents wanted him to become a doctor. So he achieved their goal, not his. Another man who built his own home didn't view it as a success. A woman who got straight A's in school didn't see this as a success because she was expected to get them. However, one changed the word success to happy moments, brave moments, or good times. These same people could recall their success experiences. They reminded hitting a home run, winning a tennis match, hearing friends exclaim, great shot. Just as goals can be as easy projects, success experiences can build happy moments or something similar. So for me, it's just monumental moments in my life that I transition into, not problems, but seeing all my problems as solutions. Like having that African-American male teacher and think that he was going to conform and help me, and he actually was against me at the time, that could have devastated me. But having that experience and having that narrative with my aunt, being able to go to a space and not be frustrated in herself and show me that I'm the answer, and that I can hang back on that moment as an area of success. So I thought about that book and said, that's what it truly is. It's not about, because a lot of times when people achieve, like the book said, like, I became a doctor because my parents said, I became an accountant because that's the family business. So it's all tied into your purpose. And I don't think, sometimes I think, in this space, I'm like, wow, they're paying me to really help develop people. I'm like, I'll do this for free. And I think about it, and people look at me like, because I always think about it 24/7, because when you look at people and they're younger than you, it's like there are different people, but some of the same scenarios come up. But then they look at us like we got it all figured out. But when we're able to relate and connect, I think that's the space we all grow together.
I think you hit on so many wonderful things, Chauncey. You know, being an educator, it's about relationships, and it's about making those connections with people. And I think, especially in the space that you are at, helping people see their potential, helping them connect to their future goals, it is about taking those experiences that maybe they've had, whether it be maybe, like you said, with that teacher that could have been maybe seen as a negative experience, but it ended up being a motivating experience. And so I think I know for me, I'm going to be on a different lens. Even though I love Michigan State, I'm a
Yeah.
Western grad.
Okay. Fine.
So and I have a background in elementary education as well, and found myself about 5 years ago in an experience of helping students connect with their future goals as a career specialist. Um, and you take those experiences that you've had in the past and help students see what their future can be. I think what was really interesting to me that you mentioned, not only in the quote of the book, but even in your own path, finding out what you were interested in and how that interest really connects you to what you want to do in the future. I think so many people go into education. I hear this all the time. Oh, I love kids. And I always caution them, and maybe you do as well. I always caution them, loving kids is not really what education's about. Education is really teaching kids. And so you've got to love teaching. You've got to love connecting with them. Like you said, those relationships, helping them find themselves, but also, teachers, the whole goal K through 12 is helping them get to their future, right? So you're really helping them on that journey. It's really not about whether you like kids, of course you do if you go into education, but I think sometimes, especially in elementary education, it's like, oh, I love little kids, they're awesome. And it's like, but teaching them is a little bit different
Right.
aspect of that. Do you feel the same way?
Yes, you got me thinking about. I told I'm an avid reader. I love reading books. And I was telling a student this morning that I gave him a book and it was a test to see if he read it. So when he came in my room, I was like, yeah, tell me more about the book. And he couldn't reference it. And I was like, I said, you're gonna hurt your future. He's like, what do you mean? I say, for you to walk into a space with other professionals, millionaires, or people that you admire, if you can function in context of the written word or spoken word, that's access to a door or a room that you want to be in, an opportunity you want to have. So the first book that I'm going to say is John Wooden's book, They Call Me Coach. And he was a coach that he coached at UCLA for like 37 years. His first 10 years, he had 10 losing seasons. His second 10 years, he won the NCAA championship 10 years in a row almost. He didn't lose a game for like 7 years. And they asked him, he said, what was your secret? He said, this pyramid of success he had, but the book was great. But in the beginning of the book, to answer your question about the development of people say they love kids, it's not about loving kids. It's about this. It's a MDE, Michigan, like not an MDE, but a National Teachers in NTEA article. And it's a poem. I can't remember the lady's name. The book is at home. But in the poem, it talks about seeing students for their potential, but this teacher is in an actual classroom. And she stands in front of the classroom and she say, look, that student is going to preach the sermon that inspires him to be the doctor to perform the surgery on her heart. And this person is going to build the vehicle that she's going to drive. So it's like they're pointing out all the students in the class. And like we said, we're both career specialists, right?
Yeah,
so when I read that article, this before I was still in the classroom, and I always go back to that poem. And I was like, that's what's the name of it. It says, this is why I teach. You can Google it. You can look it up. It's in John Wooden's book, National Teacher Education Association article. He put it in the beginning and it made me read the whole book. Because I was like, this book written in like 1960, what is it? But I loved sports at the time. I loved basketball. And I'm like, he's a great coach. He has this great philosophy on how to build relationships with his players and what to do and how to win. So I'm going to read it because he won all these championships. And when the first thing I read in that book was, this is why I teach. And it was powerful. And it's two more things that inspires me. It's this song by, I think it's by John Lucas. It's called 7 Years Old. It's a song where he's singing, but he sings starting out at 7, but he's talking about advice that he's getting from his mom and his father. And he gets all the way to 60 years old. And he talks about,
know which one you're talking about.
Yeah, I love that song. And that song is another way of understanding when you're meeting someone where they're at, when they're 7, when they're 22, when they're 30. And then the advice he said to him that I got, he said, his daddy said, look, you need to find, we say when he was 22 or something, he's like, you need to find a woman because one day you're gonna get old, you don't want to be alone. And I've been married 15 years. I was like, I heard that. I'm like, that's right. That's good advice. But it was these moments, right, that labeled success for him, but he can always go back to 7.
Yeah.
Right. And it's a children's book. You know, you worked in elementary education. It's a children's book called 11. And the girl goes through all her feelings and emotions, social emotionally, when something happens, when she's happy. I'm happy like when I was 9, when I got my first bike. I cried like when I fell down the stairs. I got a bruise on my knee when I was 4. I remember that, right? Yeah. And that's how we want to have the educational experience to connect career to learning. So then it just won't be somebody liking kids. It'll be people working with kids to see them as this, as the gatekeeper to say, you're working. So if you want to be in my space, I'm going to be connected and I'm going to be, what's the word I'm looking for? I'm going to have so much transparency that you're going to see what I do as something you can do in the future. And I'm going to answer all questions and make those true connections. So those 3 spaces for me, they call me Coach John Wooden. That's why I teach. That John Lucas song, 7 years old, and the book 11. Those spaces is why I teach. And their strong relationship and strong advice on just being a human being, right? Because that's
I think that's I think those are great references, and I encourage the students or even teachers listening in or counselors listening in to encourage students that are looking at teaching as a potential career to look at those examples you gave, because it is seeing students to their potential. It's not just, I think kids are cool and I like them. It's a whole different aspect. You talked about too having experiences early on with like 4-H. And you and I both know having those early on experiences, those early on connections can help you to know whether this is something you really want to do, or maybe it rules it out. And that's okay too. I know when I was in high school, up until I was in high school, I wanted to be a veterinarian, and I went on a job shadow, actually Michigan State University, matter of fact, and decided, no, I do not. Even though I love, same kind of concept, love animals, right? I have dogs and cats in my house because I love them and I take in rescues all the time. But that's not what I wanted for a career. Did a job shadow in an elementary classroom. That really connected with me for the same reasons it does for you. The relationships, the connections with the kids and seeing their potential. Did you, you talked about that experience with 4-H. Do you think that was really influential in helping you decide to go into education?
Definitely, because I went to 4-H. They ain't had it at this space it was on Hackley Street in Muskegon Heights, right? The Catholic services. And God rest her soul, Barb used to take us swimming, and then we used to get a chance to go to do the 4-H for the week at Michigan State. So I always got an opportunity to do that, right? Growing up, play bingo, and people come in from the extension office. All those things were just coming to us at all times. And it was like, when I got to college, I'm like, yeah, we have a summer program. You want to work 4-H? I'm like, you were a 4-H student? I'm like, yeah, I like playing basketball with kids. I can teach something I've learned when I was 14. Yeah, I remember that stuff. Start teaching classes, start having small groups of kids, walking them on campus, So little kids running everywhere, and they still have that event, even though it's COVID. And but it's like it's a great 4 days on Michigan State's
Yeah.
campus. And when you get a kid out of an environment like myself, out of a Muskegon Heights, and you get them on Michigan State's campus, and you're a little kid, and you're like, well, someday you can go here, because
Mhm.
again, going back to what I said earlier, sense of belonging is important, but also the culture shock. I had the culture shock in the 5th grade being on campus, right? But now we have students that have the culture shock at 19 because they saw Michigan State on TV playing basketball and say, I'm going to go to school there, instead of having an out of school experience where they can build a social part and say, okay, it's not
Yeah.
because of my skin color, it's not because of where I'm from. I fit because I know all the resources on campus. When you said veterinarian, I know it right. I know right where that building is at. I know right where it's at. Right by,
Yeah.
I know right where it's at. So, but I remember going on campus and seeing kids from other cities, and I knew my way around. It's like, how you know your way around? Like, I've been a 4-H student. I always came up in the summertime. I know where the rec center is at. I know where the IM circle is at. I know where the Breslin is at. I know the dormitory we stayed in, Holmes or Acres or Wilson, Hubbard. I knew those spaces. So when it came to me
It
having an
helped.
opportunity, I was there.
Yeah, it helped you to feel comfortable in that space. And I think those early experiences to see campuses, that they might want to connect with, or, seeing maybe others that have gone there and, go have a visit with them. I think those are very important. Now you talked about, because I know you work with students, helping them get to their goals. Obviously, you have a background in elementary education. So tell me a little bit about your credentials,
Okay.
not only for elementary education, but for what you do today. What are some of the credentials that you have that
All right.
people going into education might say, oh, that's what I got to look at?
Yep. So I got the elementary background. I still keep my certificate relevant. I keep my hours, my sex in, right. I keep those
Yep.
in. I have a master's in education, but I also have a certificate that you have to have a master's to get. It's called the GCDF, the Global Career um, Facilitator Certificate, and it's all about the 11 competencies you would have when it comes to career readiness, with assessments, helping skills, showing people how to navigate. And I got that from the University of Wisconsin. That's a powerful certificate, because I'm always looking at things in that structure. Going from the classroom, being in the classroom 20 years, right? Because I always talk about this. It's 3 spaces. It's school, community, and business. And a lot of times we find them where they're separate. But, like you say, being a certified career specialist, it gives that opportunity to give it that synergy to say these are all connected. And I was thinking about this morning before I came on here. I say, we spend a lot of time in school. Like, we got to make sure we have discipline taken care of. No, we're using discipline the wrong way. Discipline is my skill set. Do I practice? Am I obedient to what I'm working on? Can I focus on a task long? Do I know my purpose in this task? That's what I see discipline as. And another credential that I have that I always felt that my mother wanted me to get at is a seminary degree. I got a master's in ministry leadership. So like, I worked in churches, I've done prison fellowship work with incarcerated fathers. And that education right there is also another connection on why that relationship is strong, and knowing how to build true community partners. That helps me do that. So when I was in the classroom as an educator, I always tried to build experiences while I was in the classroom with my community. And it felt like I was carrying a heavy load. But now being in this space, it seemed like my 20 years in the classroom has shifted to a space where I'm doing all those things in one place for one school district, not all over the place. And now I'm intentional in the work because of the education and my past experiences, because that they'll
I
all
think that's
together.
Yeah, I think that, obviously everybody starts out in education if they go with that bachelor's degree. And like you said, most educators have to go on to get their master's. That's just kind of a given. And really in any career that you're going to, you're never going to stop learning, but that's especially true as an educator. And you talked about the GCDF, which Global Career Development
Facilitated. Yeah.
Facilitators.
Yeah.
Um,
Getting used to
and
it.
Yep. I have to always think about, because I have that as well. And it does allow you to see that synergy, because I think any career that you're going to go into, but especially in education, you're trying to see the value of what you're doing in the classroom, how it connects to the community, how it connects to their future employment, because it's all really, like you said, one. You're
Yes.
you're you're knitting it all together. And so, I think sometimes um, people are like, oh, I'm going to teach math. It's great. You're going to teach math, but it's not in a bubble. You're not going to teach math in a bubble. You want to make sure you're teaching math, how it's going to help them with their future, whatever that's going to be. Make it relevant, because if they don't see the relevance and they can't tie into it, it's going to fall flat. They're not just passing a test. They're not just passing an SAT. It's for their future life of what you're preparing them for. So it's kind of a higher calling in that.
Yeah.
Really, when you go into education and you look at it through that lens. So let me ask you, Chauncey, a day in the life of you. What does a day in the life of Chauncey? When does it begin? When does it end? What does it look like?
All right, this is a good close. My day starts at 4:30 in the morning.
Mm.
No alarm clock. No alarm clock. It took me like 5 years to build that skill up. I wake up at 4:30, no alarm clock. First thing I do is I pray, right?
Mm.
And then I get my affirmation journal out. And the statement I'm writing down this month is, I am so happy and grateful now that my mind is the center of divine operation. And the divine operation is always for fuller expansion and greater expression. I write that down every day with my right hand. I'm left-handed. So because
Oh,
I write it down every day. But then I also listen to the same phrase. And then I listen to Bob Proctor. I love Bob Proctor because we talk about paradigm shifts. And when we're in this career readiness business, we got to go, the people go from deficit thinking to abundance. So how do we make that shift where we affirm it every day? So when I am happy and grateful, you're framing that in a different thought. So after that, I have my tea, my vitamins, and something I've been doing because I used to love playing basketball and I had an injury. So I run about a 5K every morning. If it's cold, if it's hot, if it's raining, if it's snowing, if it's 4 degrees, if it's negative, I run at least 4 miles, 5K, 3.5 miles every day out at the lake and at the beach. And
wow.
the breathing that it does, it helps you breathe deeper, it helps you get focused, because when you study breathing, rhythmic breathing, the same breath you have when you're scared is the same breath you have when you're excited, but it's about the thought you're telling yourself. So you're working with a student and you see the anxiety when it's test anxiety, like, no, this is only a piece of paper in front of you. Your life is not being threatened. It's just a piece of paper. Let's control your breathing. Let's see where you at. I am, right? So I do that every day. I go to bed about 10 o'clock and my wife follows the same format. At first she thought it was a thing, but being 5 years in, she sees the benefits in her life also. And it keeps us in synergy because we're all vibration, we're all energy, right? I can't go to sleep and get extra energy. I got the same thing every day, but I got to figure out how to flow with my environments and make my environments connect. So I wish I could tell you a different way, but that's what I do every day. And I need to do it because it's proper brain health, proper breathing, proper diet, and just everything is, I try to plan everything out my whole day when I wake up in at 4:30 and see it.
And do you meet with students every day in like a counseling aspect? Are you working with employers every day? How does that look when you're at Muskegon?
So when I get here about 7:45, so I have my room. My office is on the corner of our building. So I have a space in my room where I have snacks. So I use the True Success format, the social emotional learning format, because I try to set goals with our students every 9 weeks using Maven or Zillow, right? Our platforms to help them with career readiness. So I'm able to tap into those databases and see their goals and their plans. And then I can look at their grades and see what experiences are going to onboard. Do they need an internship? Do I have something planned where it's a virtual meeting? Do I have a meeting with our curriculum office when I'm talking with someone or making connections? So throughout the day, I might have a meeting with the principal, the counselor, a grant coordinator. So my day goes in that reflection. And then at the end of the day, I might have a meeting or I have to do some work where go to a space and meet someone, but an opportunity for our students. So I teach a seminar class every day from 12:40, and the kids coming back from lunch, 12:40 to 1:20, where I do the Maven and the Zello, and I do True Success. And then after that, I usually sit with kids, online classes, and we just have an opportunity to bring a JAG program on to Muskegon as our own chapter. So I'm piloting that this semester too. So I'm gonna have my own course with about 15 students, so I can make sure that the things I've been doing with students, because I always look at that like this: when you come in a space, create something, but make it where it's a space for somebody to have a job. So when I move on, whatever happens, if I move on to a higher space or have to move to a different state or something, or like, oh, Chauncey, that this job, the coordinator of student success, wow, he left a whole plan where anybody can do this. And that's how I feel about making spaces better. So that's what I do in the capacity in my role here on a daily basis. It's a lot.
That is a lot. And, and you have the energy to do it, because I know you personally, and that is, I've met with you in meetings, and I tell you, your energy, if we could bottle it, that would be awesome. So the last question I'd like to ask you, because I know you have students you've got to teach. If you could give a nugget of advice, knowing the great things about your job and some of the challenges about your job, but what would a last nugget of advice would you give to a middle school or high school teacher, student looking to going into teaching?
Yeah, I would say this. I'm gonna say this is a theory that I created. It says hope is a decision that we transition through our experiences of pain, shame, and change. So when I say hope, we hope to make the right choices when we make a decision. But when we're talking about pain, when the learning experiences we have, when the pitfalls and the things we go through, but the shame to not go back to who we were, but to be better and to see that I had the courage and the endurance to grow in a better you. So hope is a decision that leads to the pathway where you work through your pain, you don't look back on your shame, and you see a better change for yourself. So if I would leave any golden nugget for anybody, a student or an adult or anybody in any space, use your hope to help you transition.
Well, Chauncey, thank you so much. I know you have to go to your class. I appreciate you taking the time and sharing your journey with us today on Future Focus. I know, and hopefully I'll be seeing you soon in some meetings and various things. And you just have a great day, and thank you again.
Yeah, appreciate you. And hey, everybody do their best. And I appreciate the honor of being able to speak. Everybody don't get a chance to do these things. And I hope somebody learns something from my experience.
Thank you, Chauncey. Have a great day.
Yeah, bye.